this script. As a preliminary matter, this is Hillary Hedges Rayport, chair of the Nantucket Historical Commission. So I'm going to go through everybody who's here and confirm that everyone can hear us. So the commissioners we have are David Silver.
Here.
Yeah, great. Hi, David. Tom Montgomery.
Here.
Ben Norman.
Here.
Hi, Ben. Nikki Rowland.
Here.
And Angus McLeod.
Here.
And I am expecting Clement and Georgia, who I'm sure will join us soon. We have our select board liaison, Dawn Hill-Holgate. Dawn, can you hear me? Dawn, you can hear us, right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Right.
Welcome, Dawn. Hi. And it looks like we have a few guests, Mary Longacre and Mary Bergman. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
And we have our staff liaison, Holly. Holly, can you confirm you can hear me?
Good morning.
Good morning. Great. Okay, this open meeting of the Nantucket Historical Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order due to the state of COVID in the Commonwealth. We've been advised and directed to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in publicly accessible physical location. All members are allowed in person to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda, permits us to meet remotely. This meeting will feature public comment. We're convening by Zoom. The meeting is being recorded. All attendees are participating by video conference. Please be aware that other folks may be able to see you. Take care not to screen share your computer, and anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided in the packet. We are now turning to the agenda. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Please hold until your name is called, and if I will go through all the members, inviting everyone to comment, ask questions, make motions, and if you want to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So we're going to start with asking for any comments or suggestions or requests for edits to the minutes of our December 4th meeting. Does anybody have any comments, or if not, could I have a motion to approve the minutes? Tom, you're muted, but I read lips and I could tell that you said I move to approve the minutes of the Would anyone like to second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Angus. All in favor by roll call, David.
Aye.
Nikki.
Yes, aye.
I see that Clement has joined. Clement, can you vote to approve the meetings and confirm you can hear us? Clement?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm fine. I'm on my tiny little phone, but I'm here. Yes, I approve the minutes.
Okay, thank you. And I am also an aye to approve the minutes. So the minutes are now approved. Announcements. I have some announcements. Does anybody else have any announcements? No one? So I have an announcement that's a personal announcement, which is that I decided to apply to Boston University, pursue a master's in preservation studies, and I've been accepted. Yeah, thank you. It was a squeaker.
That's great news, Hillary.
Thanks. So I'm going to be pursuing a master's in preservation studies.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be super interesting. And I'll be sure to pass on everything I learned. Do we have any staff announcements?
Sure, yes. So one thing, I'm finalizing documents for the building you see behind me that was passed by select board. Got those documents and they'll be recorded soon, so that will be done. Also, working on dates with Resilient Nantucket's consultants who will be having special meetings with the HDC. Of course, it's a public meeting, so I think that the Historical Commission would be welcome to attend those meetings. Of course, we do have to post them if we're going to have a quorum, but we're looking at scheduling a Friday in January, a Friday in February, and a Friday in March. And we're looking at our toolkit. We're going to look at our draft that will be presented in February. And then we're looking at hopefully wrapping that up in the spring. And then after town meetings timeframe, we're going to be having, hopefully we're working on right now, a joint type of conference like we've done before with NPT. So look to see that the town and the NPT collaborate once again for preservation. There's that. And wanted to also, you've probably been seeing my emails out there, CLG application. We need to get resumes and letters. So if you have submitted it to me already, thank you. If you have not, please get it to me. If you don't have a resume, no fret, just type it up in a letter format. That's not a problem. We're not looking for you all to reinvent the wheel, but we just need your information so we can put that in that packet. And I have been working on the application itself with the required questions. That's pretty much ready to go. I'm just waiting on everybody's information. So that's it. Thank you.
Hey, Holly, on that point, I'm just wondering if we can help move people along, identify, any reasons why there's a delay in getting the information in. I'm thinking about how everyone who has to go through an appointment has to submit an application to the select board with some kind of a narrative. Maybe we could, and I'd be happy to do this if you let me know who we're looking for. We could go through the past packets of the select board, which are all archived, and pull out those applications, because I think sometimes people fill them out by hand and then they don't have a copy of them, so it's not easy for them to just like send it in. But if we help find them online, do you think that's a good idea?
I'm not quite sure I follow.
Well, what I'm
Sorry.
saying is that when people apply to be, and this isn't true for the elected members of the 5 elected members, they run for office, but everyone else is appointed by the select board. And as part of that process, they have to fill out an application, which is similar to a resume and qualifications. It has some other information that they state are resume qualifications. And that's all, as part of the archive, that's all on file. So
yes, I have a copy of all of those. I personally would think it would be beneficial if people could just even write a letter to me on behalf of this application with their qualifications. I don't think reproduce, I mean, I get it for time sensitiveness, but I think it would be best if we could get actual information from people. I will tell you this, not everybody in this commission has given me what we need. I've received quite a few from both commissions, so we're about half and half. So I'm asking for both. Both commissions.
Well, I'm just trying to identify roadblocks and help people move along. And I recognize that everyone has different levels of, information around and different levels of comfort and facility with typing stuff up. So, but I do want to emphasize that it's time sensitive. Like, we had a deadline of getting this application in by the end of the year, and we're basically there. And then we go into this queue to be processed by the Park Service and Chris Kelly. And if we can get it done before March, it's really going to help us. So I'd really like to get this in by the end of the year. And if the roadblock is we got to get people's information, I just want to do anything we can to help people solve that problem if it's created a problem for them. So anyone listening to this who hasn't sent in their information to Holly, get it in right away before Christmas. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so now we're going to go on to our next topic on our agenda, which is the Wilkes Square Harbor Place redevelopment. I know we have a super long packet today because we have a lot of documents in the packet, including the engineering report. I think the the Harbor Place report is on page 87 of the PDF. So this is a report that we've discussed, but it hadn't been shared at our last meeting on December 4th. It was finished over the weekend with input from this commission and our guests and select board liaison on the 4th. It was forwarded to the town, to Dawn, to the working group. We have Dawn here today, and now that you've all had like a couple of weeks to digest this, I thought maybe we could get some feedback from Dawn, and we could also get feedback from the whole commission about what needs to change in the report, what we think about the report, and somehow, decide on next steps here, pushing this to some kind of final resting point, whatever that might be. So I guess I would like to start with asking if there's any one of the commissioners who would like to kick off a conversation. Would anyone like to raise a hand and kick off any commentary on this project? I see Mickey put it with that.
I don't have a lot of commentary on it, except for the fact that I think it's a really well put together, very thorough report. I've read it a couple of times, and I think you covered a lot of ground. I'm really pleased with the way it's come out, and I just hope a lot of people look at it and take it very seriously.
Thank you, Mickey. Some of the feedback that I got on this report, well, two things I wanted to say about this. First of all, I did send it to a number of people, and even after I followed up with them, I found that like a lot of people who I thought would be super interested in devouring this report right away, like hadn't really read it. So I'm wondering, it's always a challenge when you have analysis of dense information about how to present it in a way that doesn't sacrifice the rigor of the analysis or the information, but also is digestible and scannable. So I want to put that out there as something to work on with this report. And the other feedback that I got from several people was the importance of and the concern of the community about coastal resiliency. A number of people said to me, I just can't believe we're even thinking about building in this area. I mean, now we are not thinking about building. The area is or will be privately owned, and the owners will make their decision about what to do. But I wondered if our report we didn't emphasize enough. I just thought about how we seem to have this quite well-organized and active coastal resiliency initiative on Nantucket that's being carried by a couple different groups. And I wondered if by emphasizing zoning, I wondered if we needed to emphasize that more in this report and bring, if we had kind of two parallel conversations, one about coastal resiliency and one about zoning and building and development of the coast, and concerned that maybe they weren't working together. So that was one thought. Angus, I see your hand up.
I want to echo what Mickey said. I feel like the document that we created struck a balance between giving enough specifics to give it depth and meaning, but without all of it. I thought that it was a good, approachable, accessible, synthesized version of everything that we were processing. Regarding the coastal resiliency, I feel like it's a huge issue, and we did touch on it, but we didn't really emphasize it. And it is an issue of its own, but how it affects design, especially with elevation of the buildings and the preparation for flooding and the rise of the tide in that area is critical to the design and guidelines that are set forth for that area. So in that respect, it is an integral part of everything that was covered.
Well, we have Mary with us. Yeah, did you?
Why did I think that was coming? I'm not in a position right now to offer an analysis from a coastal resilience perspective of a document that you created, but my approach would be to encourage you to work with Vince Murphy, the coastal resilience coordinator for the town, to see if there's another perspective that you want to include. Unfortunately, it's just well beyond my expertise to comment on what you have already created and a major development. So I apologize, I don't really have something to offer, but the only thing I will say is that flooding there is an issue, and it's one that we have to make sure that whatever development occurs doesn't cause flooding to be worse on the surrounding area. That I think would be a primary concern, not a concern at the level where we are right now, but that's where my focus would be.
Holly?
Thank you. So this is the reason why Resilient Nantucket and the Coastal Resiliency Plan are so integral with one another, and why it was paramount when we were creating the RFPs for both of these projects to include preservation, and essentially why town staff was very adamant on choosing the consultant that was chosen, which is Arcadis, because they were smart in creating their proposal to include our consultant, who is a sub-consultant. So that effort that we've been working on with Resilient Nantucket is going to be included with the Coastal Resiliency Plan. Obviously, since day one, that's something that both Vince and I have talked about, on how this proposed, how our initiative is going to tie in with what is going to be foreseen downtown with the Wilkes Square, Harbor Square redevelopment area. Obviously, that's first and foremost an important aspect. I don't know if just mentioning it would be sufficient from your standpoint, but I think we've, for instance, our consultant is going to be presenting in January, thanks to Mary, to the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee on their toolkit. So there's a lot of integration between the coastal resiliency efforts as well as our preservation efforts. So we're at a good standpoint, maybe just referencing the town's respective projects that we're working on and plans to make sure that it's, and I think everybody has it on their radar, but just driving home the point that policies and procedures and guidelines and whatnot are in the works to be developed for the entire island, not just this location, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Holly. So, I mean, the report does mention that. So it sounds like everyone is saying that as long as we acknowledge that, this is a very big factor for this parcel, that's sufficient as far as commentary from our commission. Dawn, can you give us an update? I know you had a meeting with the consultant on
Yep.
the money.
The Weston and Sampson consultants found your report super helpful. And I did raise that going forward, we'd like to kind of get something similar, at least in terms of maybe not as thorough of a report, but some comments from all of the boards that will be involved in any kind of permitting process for the area. So that's in the works. There's been a slight wrench put into the entire proposal that National Grid's players have changed, and they've kind of changed their thinking. So we're actually in a regrouping phase right now in terms of what the town's role is. When I'll hopefully have a little bit more clarity on that by mid-January. So just if you don't hear anything, we may actually be on hold for about the next 3 or 4 weeks. Trying to figure out unfortunately, a lot of the people who've been involved from National Grid standpoint all along have retired, and completely new people have taken over that were not up to speed on all the work that had already been done. And I'm a little bit fearful that they have a strong desire to just sell the property that they don't need, the surplus, and hopefully that doesn't happen without the town having some stake in it. But that's sort of new information. I think that your mention of the coastal resiliency, I think that's will be well covered in this location, and definitely looking for further input over time from you and from the HDC on building parameters in terms of how this is really going to take shape. But there's a degree of having to wait for more definitive proposals once we know who's actually going to own these pieces of property. But in terms of the development agreement, if that is still moving forward, hopefully it is. Any continued thoughts on parameters that should be in there are always helpful.
Okay. I see Tom has a hand up. You're muted, Tom.
Is that all right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I have a question for Dawn, just with what you just said. If National Grid and the new people decide they don't want to own this and they want to sell, does that open the door for the town? Has the town got any ideas of purchasing that as well?
I would hope so. I mean, I'd love your feedback on that. Do you think that it'll be a multi-million-dollar real estate purchase? What's the temperature from all of you on an override?
It's waterfront property, and when it got to be my turn to speak, I was going to bring up the thing that all these rules and regulations and proposals and everything else is great, but it being waterfront property and it's also privately owned, if we were part of the stakeholders that owned a piece of that waterfront, I always have been an advocate of making sure that the scalpers and just the general boating public, I'm not talking about the yachties that come here from June until September. I'm talking about Kyle Sherlin and those guys have a place to land on the waterfront down where we're talking about and still be able to use it as a deep water thing, because Children's Beach or the town pier is not what I'm talking about. And I just want to make sure that if that's as far as I'm concerned, a fortuitous turn of events, in that if the town can afford to put that in front of town meeting and we want to appropriate the funds to buy it, it's a grant. I guarantee it. I granted that it's a waterfront property in Nantucket, so that's not going to be cheap, as we all know. But I think that is an 11th hour thing that if we could pull it off, I'm all in favor of doing that.
Thanks, Tom. I'm glad you said that. There are a couple of parcels that are not owned by National Grid that have been already offered to the town, which we may be crafting an article. We've been doing some studies on them, or articles. There isn't, the only thing I would say is there isn't actually direct waterfront. I mean, it's very close, but it doesn't actually abut the water. The land bank property does though. So there could be something in conjunction with what the land bank owns and what Mickey very nicely just sold to the land bank too. That could work really well with the parcels that may become available. But we'll definitely be looking more and more at that. It actually, the more we could control of it, the better off we would be in terms of the planning, obviously.
I think that's what I'm really saying.
Dawn, I think there is one of the piers owned by Nantucket Island Resorts, which is designated for delivery of fuel right now. And that with the fuel tank moving, will the use of that be repurposed?
Hillary, actually, they are re-permitting 2 fuel tanks. I don't know if you probably didn't see our meeting.
I know that they're going to keep a couple fuel tanks for service to the boat basin.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if that required that they continue to have one pier dedicated for fuel delivery.
I think that currently when they don't need it for fuel delivery, which they're doing more and more by truck, they park boats there. I've seen them have boats there, but sometimes things like the Coast Guard comes in there, and I mean, it's used for different waterfront uses, but that's definitely, that property is theirs and not part of the parcels that we're talking about. Does that answer your question?
It raises more questions, but yeah. So I think the biggest learning, I'm just trying to bring up the kind of the high level issues that surfaced through this exercise that we went through. I mean, first of all, I just feel much more well informed about, you know, what are the factors down there, what are the concerns, what do we need to keep in mind, what are the important issues. And the one really important issue is the Chapter 91 requirement and the extent of that requirement and how hugely it impacts the space. Dawn, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that because you brought it up last time. We have engaged our town council, the people who have extensive experience in Chapter 91 to start an analysis now that we talked about that last week.
Okay, so I'm thrilled to hear that, and I think it will be very, I hope, I mean, we'll find out, but my instinct is that it will be very informative about what you could achieve for planning purposes, for community purposes across the entire parcel, even if you don't purchase land. That land could be set aside, you know, because as everybody knows, that entire parking lot is a privately owned piece of land, which is publicly available for public parking because of a license agreement, not because of any purchase that the town had to make with funds to secure public parking. So I think as the town continues to develop their vision and negotiate with the owners, basically negotiating some kind of Chapter 91 arrangement, and that the owners would agree to, that the owners would agree to, period. Even though normally that negotiation is between the DEP and the owner. In this case, our town is a significant stakeholder, and it's, you know, most of the land is owned by this public utility. So I think we have a right and an obligation and an opportunity as a town to be part of that negotiation. Which brings up the second really big picture issue. And I want to note that our Planning Commission, which is the Nantucket Planning Economic Development Commission and PNEDC, is meeting on Monday at 6 p.m. to talk about this very same thing. And I see this municipal harbor plan as a really, and this is mentioned in the report, a very powerful public planning tool. So did the planning director, or, I mean, this is living right now in the Natural Resources Department, and they're a huge stakeholder because we're talking about the harbor and the health of the harbor when we talk about a municipal harbor plan. but the planning commission is also a huge stakeholder. So are we going to have some discussions about renewing this expired municipal harbor plan and making sure that it includes directives about public space and our specific community planning goals? Does anyone know? Holly? Holly?
Yeah, I can't speak for the NPDC and the involvement with the harbor plan. When we talked about it last time, again, I sent an email to my colleagues over at Natural Resources because I knew that this was something that's been in the works. Of course, COVID has put a lot of dampers on a lot of different initiatives, but that is in the works. So, it does live with the Natural Resources Department. Obviously, any plan that has any type of involvement with land use and all that stuff does go through the NPDC. But no, it's my understanding that it's in the works for planning this coming up year. I don't know anything more than that, but I don't know if you all wanted to reach out to not just Vince Murphy, but his supervisor, Jeff Carlson, who's the head of Natural Resources Department. But I do know this is their bailiwick, and it's in their wheelhouse, so to speak.
Okay. So I think for the community when I kind of backed into this analysis, and I guess Nikki and I were talking about this parcel, none of us knew what a municipal harbor plan was, but it became very clear quite quickly that the municipal harbor plan should be a powerful planning tool where a municipal planning function, through our planning department, would have objectives for the use of these tidelands, which are, they've been filled, and so they're now privately owned, but they have an obligation of public access. And understanding that and detailing that in the municipal harbor plan is the number one most powerful and most efficient and direct way to ensure that the public continues to have the right of access to these tidelands. So, one of the things that I've certainly experienced working with the town of Nantucket is that information can be siloed, commissions can be siloed, and they're working on what they're working on, and there's not really a function for them to collaborate. And I think the planning commission is that function, because we have a member of the Concom on that commission, we have the planning board on that commission, we have a member of the select board on that commission. So I would certainly hope on Monday when they meet that they consider this this municipal harbor plan, and how getting it in place sooner rather than later, getting it back in place sooner rather than later. It's also mentioned in the master plan, so this isn't coming out a lot, left field. There's a master planning process. Yeah, Holly.
If I may, it's not just mentioned in the master plan, it's also mentioned in our HMP update. So again, there's a lot of tie-ins with different initiatives and requirements.
I don't know what the HNP update is.
The hazard mitigation plan.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So that was kind of the second big theme or related theme to Chapter 91 that popped out of this. And I would say the third big theme that popped out of this report was the importance, and this gets to Dawn's, Dawn said, if you all have specific feedback about what should be included in the development agreement, specific parameters that should be included in the development agreement, we would like to know what they are. So what we identified in our report was this gap between the CDT zoning and what one experiences in the built environment of downtown. And, our small group went around and around like, well, do we go out with tape measures and measure this? And like, do we make recommendations? And we took some stabs at like what those parameters might be. But then we also felt like, I don't know if we're the right people to be doing this. I mean, we're recommending that it should be done in the same way that we're recommending that the town should engage experts in Chapter 91 negotiation. I think here we're recommending that the town engage some planning analysts to really look in a more granular way at the downtown and at every area that is currently zoned commercial downtown or CBT. That should be reviewed to say what are the actual lot coverages, open space, side and rear yard setbacks, and height in the commercial downtown zone. What are they actually today? And how big of a gap is there between what they are today and what is allowed for under this CBT zone? And therein lies the development agreement overlay. And I'd like to hear comments. Okay, Angus.
I just wanted to say, or reiterate that the development agreement is just critical in this whole process. That's what's going to translate any sort of development into something that looks like what we're familiar with for downtown Nantucket. I wanted to say about the coastal resiliency, that should be part of that agreement, that the acknowledgement of it and how that is how it affects the design and built environment down there. So I would just have that be part of the agreement.
Yeah, I agree, Angus. I mean, one of the things that I just want to acknowledge, this isn't any kind of like a recommendation or anything, but I do think there's some, I mean, Mary, maybe you'd be better to answer this, but aren't there some communities that are just deciding that you can't build in these areas, like retreat? You know, like after Hurricane Sandy, communities said, you can't rebuild here. It's uninsurable. We don't want you to rebuild. And so we have this area of undeveloped land. I mean, is there any precedent for saying, and maybe, I mean, I was getting at this through the Chapter 91 because it's tideland, so you could say it's public, so, you know, you have more say in what can or can't be built or if it should be open space. But I mean, the concept of pre-retreat, like don't build there in the first place. Mary, I saw you had a hand up.
Yeah, so the coastal resilience plan, that's one of the main functions, is to recommend the appropriate type of action in a particular location. So is it retreat? Is it to build a more resilient infrastructure? Is it to build more natural features to help protect what's there or to restore an environment? So that will come out hopefully in 2021 in the coastal resilience plan, but no, we don't have a specific look at that area at the moment. Our next meeting is January 12th for anybody who wants to join us. I want to state better what I said before, and that is that the water management is a really huge issue here, in the same way that this site needs to fit in the historical and architectural context, in the same way that it needs to accommodate the transportation needs of the community. Water management, whether that's stormwater or floodwater or wastewater, really needs to be integrated with the surrounding community so that, for instance, stormwater coming off of hard surfaces doesn't inundate historic buildings that are just outside the area. You know, we saw all the flooding yesterday. I don't know if anybody saw the videos, you know, Straight Wharf completely underwater and so on. You know, well, if that flooding is a more frequent sunny day feature, we don't need to exacerbate that by putting more water from somewhere that's been built higher as runoff into that area. So I don't know if that's within your purview of what you want to mention here, but I think it's worth noting more specifically than just coastal resilience is that water management on this parcel is a very important concept. Thank you.
That's, I think, a good way of putting it because it's more expansive and specifically related to the problems that are created when development happens with water, problems with water. I'm just going to go around and see if anybody else wanted to comment on any observations about the report. David, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I mean, I really enjoyed the report and thought that Hillary, you, Angus, and Mickey, the work you did was all excellent. So I you know, I'm behind the report and very much hope that pass this along.
Georgia?
The only thing I might comment is to emphasize that point that's made early in this report that we got, and also by Dawn. If the town does ever try to purchase this lot from Nat Grid or NIR or whichever is going to sell it, Nat Grid, you observed in the report that Nat Grid has two obligations. It has an obligation to its ratepayers to return funds back to ratepayers. It has another obligation to a municipality to do things in the public interest. I'm only thinking that in the context of negotiating a price on this, if it should get to that, and we should have to approve it at town meeting, the part about municipal mandate for the public interest ought to be emphasized. We don't need to pay the complete market price, whatever that might be. And also the elements that make this so undevelopable, flooding and other issues ought to enter into those negotiations. I mean, this may be obvious to you, Dawn, but I just wanted to point it out. I think that obligation for a municipal mandate for the public interest is potentially a useful negotiating tool.
Thank you, Georgia. Agreed. Clement, anything?
Yeah, the thing that I keep hearing, and thank you for the lovely report, is that we've established so many commissions. We've got coastal resiliency. We've got, I can't even think of all of the names of them. I would love to see everybody get together and be involved on this property. It would be nice to have everybody talking and coming up with having the same idea of how it should be developed. I'd also like to maybe, not that this is maybe naive, but as I understand it, Land Bank has a lot of money to spend. Perhaps if this were to become available, they could help with the price.
Yeah, I think they're certainly aware of it and monitoring it.
I'm sure they are, since they've gotten, thinking about Mickey's property and also the property along Washington Street. And so they're focused on this, but if everybody could get together and talk it over, it seems to me that would be helpful.
Yeah, like maybe the working group could pull together. Yeah. I mean, I will say the Land Bank was offered to buy the bit under the tank farm and declined because of the pollution issues. Tom, I saw a hand up.
Am I unmuted?
Yep.
It's kind of a question for Dawn again. I mean, this may be premature, but are there any numbers being thrown around as to what we're looking at here?
The only number we've been given to date was on the tank farm parcel. For that, what they would sell that for remediated. The parcels are not fully identified yet on what else will be available for sale. That's still in the works.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, and speaking of numbers, I mean, the other big piece of news that happened since we talked on December 4th, of course, was the announcement that New England Development, NIR, purchased the rest of the parking lot and the Stop and Shop and the tank farm. Wait, they didn't, did they purchase the tank farm? No.
No, sorry, they did. That's the parcel that they did not purchase. So they purchased, including like where the haul over is, and I believe Fresh was also included.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so on the other side of Candle Street. So, one of the things that I think is, it's nice, we're working on a long-term plan for the entire parcel. We almost now need to recognize that there's two tracks here, the longer term track with National Grid and all the complications there. And I would say there's a nearer term track with New England Development, because they have put forward specific plans, which may or may not still be what they're looking at. I don't know. A snapshot of one of the plans was included in our report, which showed a proposal for building additional retail over like 80% of the parking lot and leaving some green space there, which of course would require finding parking somewhere else on the spot. So I would just say clearly that would require renegotiation of the Chapter 91 license. Right now, we don't have a municipal harbor plan, so the DEP is free to negotiate whatever they wish with the developer. Obviously, the town is in close discussion with the developer and receiving its own Chapter 91 advice. But the only way, we could find ourselves in a situation where the only way we would know about a proposed renegotiation of the Chapter 91 license for that parcel would be to monitor the notices that have to be put in the Inquirer Mirror. And there's a 30-day comment period. Dawn, do you feel that NIR would notify the town about an intention to renegotiate that Chapter 91 license on the parking lot?
I do feel that way. John Tuig, who is the main representative for them, has been very good at staying in touch with me and whoever has been chairman in the past. And he reached right out to me before that came out in the paper to let me know that had solidified. I mean, I actually knew about it further back, that they were in negotiations, but
yeah,
he's been very good about keeping a very open relationship with the town.
Okay. So as far as next steps with this report and what to do, I just want to go through a couple things. I think what we want is, we've compiled some information and some observations, which Dawn has let us know has already been very valuable to the working group. So that's terrific and wonderful for our commission to hear. I think we want to finalize the report and finalize a series of recommendations, and then we want to distribute those recommendations widely to the interested parties. I think the interested parties are obviously the Coastal Resiliency Committee, the Department of Natural Resources, Jeff Carlson, the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, the Planning Director, and the Chair of the Planning Commission, and the Select Board. I think that the Chamber of Commerce is also an interested party. Are there any other interested parties that I'm missing?
I was just adding the HDC.
The HDC, of course. The HDC. And as far as the recommendations, so the recommendation about kind of a unified town-led negotiation around Chapter 91, the municipal harbor plan, having the develop. Now we're recommending that the town do a zoning study, and that any overlay development agreement, you know, our big concern that we have is that if we have this expansive zoning CDT, we're not going to create the variety of building forms and heights, including small forms, with freestanding structures that we see in the downtown. Now, Dawn, this is really a question for you and a question for Holly, because I really don't feel like we have great communication with the planning department. Do we, the Preservation Planning Group, need to ask for funds to lead that study? Or should we be confident that a study will be conducted, or you'll let us know if someone else will lead the study and we can be a consulting party to that study? What's the best way to act on that recommendation?
I think the planning department themselves are undertaking recommendations on that.
Okay. So, yeah, Mary?
Quickly, Hillary, to go back to your question about interested parties, just a reminder that transportation is critical in that parcel. Access to the steamship runs across the edge, access to the High Line, obviously, parking. And we don't have a parking, or excuse me, a transportation planner at the moment. I'm not aware if there's any organization for transportation companies, NRTA. So I wonder if somebody can be a voice for that, whether it's the Truckers Association or whoever, but that might be somebody who should have a seat at the table.
I see Dawn has a hand up.
I was just going to let Mary know. So we've engaged Weston and Sampson, and they are doing an extensive work on traffic flow down there. That's one of the big pieces that we hired them for, and in conjunction with the planning department. The planning department's involved as well.
Yeah, the Planning Commission, as our regional planning authority, is responsible for transportation. So even though we don't have a transportation planner, we still have, an oversight authority that's responsible for it. Okay, so what I heard from Dawn was that the planning department is responsible for any additional zoning analysis and recommending an overlay. I guess we would prefer to wait and react to the overlay that is proposed. Is everybody in agreement with the idea that we are not undertaking a study further than what we've already done, which is to point out the pretty big gap between CDT and the challenge if you have, just a blanket, gross zoning requirement of creating the type of downtown and built environment that we want to see? Does anybody think we should be doing something different? Nikki?
Well, I think that's all the right approach, but I think in conjunction with that, we don't want to use the HDC as sort of a check on how much development takes place, but it's all we've got at the moment, and I think it worked fairly well on the South Water Street project in terms of limiting what they were able to do. So I think that at some point, this group, the NHC and the HDC, need to kind of get together and get a little bit more detail together regarding a design guidelines for downtown, which would include density to some degree, and a lot of the factors we're already thinking about.
Okay, so maybe what we do to follow up on this is request this joint meeting with the HCC. Holly.
I don't want to put a damper on everybody in that recommendation, but there's no bandwidth with the HDC right now. For having special meetings and whatnot. I just wanted to throw that out at you right now. So it's not going to come with an open heart, if you will. I did also want to notate too, there seems to be a little bit of, and I'm coming at this as a planner, having an overlay versus a development agreement are kind of two different things. Development agreement is what the town is looking at doing on this, and that's where any type of design criteria that's going to be recommended is going to be included in that document, not necessarily an overlay. Master plan is actually calling out for the phase out of overlay. So I just wanted to get that vocabulary out there that they're two different things.
But Holly, what's the problem with overlays? Other towns use them. I really don't understand why this concept would be phased out.
I'm just going by what the 2009 master plan has says. They're trying to phase out overlays. Not every jurisdiction within any state necessarily likes them, but that was called out in just like how the master plan also calls out certain districts to be phased out. Same kind of concept. There are certain things that you do over time. I don't know the history of it. That happened before I came back home, so I don't really know. But I do know that that's notated.
I mean, Holly, as our preservation planner, what would you like to see happen here as far as the zoning analysis? Is this something you're going to be working on, do you know?
I wasn't planning on it, to be honest with you. That's not, I don't have the bandwidth for something like that. Sorry. I would think that what you all are looking to do as far as a recommendation that you know, a lot of it you've already kind of covered would be included within the development agreement. You looking at what the CDT has said, because again, I mentioned this before, and I've received, so when they came up with the CDT zoning classification, it wasn't just plunked out of a book like the 1972 zoning classifications. Most of them were kind of like the RC2 and all those that pretty much allows everything but the kitchen sink. It was actually, there was a study that was done that came up with that. The planning director has actually given me a quite a large book on that study when they came up with the CDT. I do not have it in my possession at the moment. It's in my office at work. I am home, and I haven't really had a time to digest that, but that's where the foundations and the recommendations in the master plan and in the zoning bylaw to create the CDT zoning classification came from. So if there are certain parameters that you are looking for, I would recommend that's where the development agreement would come into play. I can't see the planning commission or the planning board recommending having a separate overlay. That's exactly what the development agreement would include. Yeah. Specific parameters for design criteria for this location. And again, that's where you have a map. And I'm not just, you know, I've had experience with this as a planner in South Carolina. So I do understand how development agreements work. And I know there's a difference between the states, but at the same time, they're very similar. You create an actual development plan for that location that the development agreement would be for, and you can outline everything from setbacks, impervious coverage ratios, to land use, to design criteria. I mean, it can get that in depth. So what I'm suggesting is if there are certain criteria within the existing CDT classification that this commission feels are not doing enough, not really preserving the historic character of this location, then that's where those recommendations would go into what I would say a development agreement and not an overlay.
Yeah, and I'll just say we've heard that, and we're using the term interchangeably. Whatever the vehicle is that is going to add additional detail, including restrictions to the CDT, that's what we're interested in seeing. But what we're suggesting is that we're going to recommend that development agreement be informed by a more detailed survey of the existing downtown. And that we would like that to be done, and we'd like to review it. And we're also willing to do it if we're asked to do it. Dawn, I saw that you had a hand up.
I just wanted to let you know that we did discuss the need for these parameters in our last meeting with Weston and Sampson, with the planning director. So everyone is well aware of the thinking and the sentiment that you all expressed last time of wanting this to be a little bit more in keeping with some of the side streets of downtown rather than Main Street in terms of the way it lays out. Okay. So that was discussed.
That's great too. And then the final recommendation, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly from the report, was around the widening of the streets and not wanting to see the streets, not wanting to see idling cars on both sides with the center travel lane. So I'd like to wrap up this part of the discussion about this report. I think where we are is that I'm hearing that everybody endorses the report. I'd like to take the recommendations in the report and just tighten them up, make it a little more scannable, a little more readable, and a little more directive as far as these are our recommendations, and circulate it to the interested parties. So could I have a motion indicating that that's a good way forward?
Moved.
Okay, I saw Tom's hand went up, but Tom was muted.
Second.
Sorry.
Okay, so Tom is moving and Angus is seconding, and I'm going to take a vote of the active commissioners. David?
Aye.
Nikki? Georgia?
Aye.
Clement?
Aye.
Ben, we didn't hear from you. Is there anything you wanted to say about this or vote?
No, I'm just kind of catching up on where I left off, so I'm just listening at this point, but I have nothing to comment on at the moment.
Okay, well, as an alternate, that's great to have you here. And I am also an aye. So terrific. So moved, and we'll get to work on that and distribute that. And anyone who would like to dial into the 6 p.m. Monday meeting of the NPEDC, they will be talking about this. They do have our report, and hopefully, there'll be some comment about that. Okay, I want to move on with sidewalks and.
Hillary,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's my understanding, I may not be perfectly correct, that in order to participate in Monday's 6 p.m. NPEDC meeting, you need to register in advance with Eleanor. You can't just show up unannounced. Some town meetings are not letting people in.
Why not? Public meeting.
I was unable to get into a meeting earlier this week, and so I'm not quite sure what's going on, but Eleanor did send me a notice saying that you had to register with her in advance in order to get in the meeting.
They didn't send me that notice, so I will go ahead and indicate my interest in participating in that meeting. I did write to her and indicate that we had a report and that we've been working on this, but I was not invited to register, so I'll indicate my interest in doing that. Dawn?
I just needed to let you know I have to drop off.
Okay.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
You
Happy
too.
holidays.
Thank
Thank you for joining us. Bye. Angus.
Oh, I just wanted to say, if you make contact to get a link to that meeting on Monday, please forward it around.
Well, it'll be a specific link for me, so everybody should write Eleanor Antonetti, anyone who wants to join. Holly, do you have any comment about that? I mean, this is part of your group.
I have not spoken to Eleanor specifically about that. I'm not too sure. I do know that I'm involved with HTC obviously all the time, every day, every week. And HTC handles their public participation differently than the other boards. Most of the other boards are doing Zoom webinar, and Zoom webinar is where you're required to sign up, just like the way that the select board does. So when you register, you're getting your exactly your own link to it.
Yeah.
I know the planning board does it that way. I think the ZBA does it, and a lot of the other boards, but HDC does not handle it that way. We do it the old fashioned way. So we're both monitoring anybody that received, actually linked in on Zoom, and anybody that is just watching on YouTube. So we're different.
Well, what I had expected, which it sounds like it may not be the case, but I will investigate, is that you have to register ahead if you want to have your video on and be really a participant with your video on. But if you just want to monitor the meeting and raise your hand to make a comment or make a public comment, especially if you want to make a public comment, anyone can do that, just by clicking the link to join the meeting. And that's how you join the HTC meeting and the select board meeting. You don't have to register ahead of time. And I know the planning board had been taking public comment only by chat, and it was a real problem. So they made a change. So I'll ask the planning commission about the same thing.
To Holly's point, different meetings are being conducted using different formats. I tried to get into a meeting, none of the ones that have been discussed so far, and the message that I got was you must be pre-registered, and I was unable to join the meeting after it was in progress as a member of the public. So everybody's doing them a little bit differently. I don't know what the reason is.
You're going to get
What was it?
Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board. Yeah.
All right, I'd like to move on because we don't have a ton of time and we have a lot of other stuff to cover. We are moving on to sidewalks and historic streets. The first topic under this is section 106 review sparks and sewer with the MHC. So this is actually kind of related to the whole concept of public participation and public comment, compliance with legal requirements about review. So as you know, we've been aware of and monitoring the Complete Streets project, which includes Sparks Avenue, Pleasant Street, and William Street. We've been aware of it for over a year. We've talked about it at our meetings, and I've personally sent notice to Andrew and Rob McNeil requesting to be a consulting party informed about progress. And what I've discovered, because I hadn't been getting any notices, I hadn't been getting any plans, nobody's been requesting to come to our meetings and present to us. So I called the Massachusetts Historical Commission and spoke with Jonathan Patton there and found out that, they had received plans directly from the consultant Beta. Beta didn't copy the Historical Commission, they copied the Historic District Commission, and basically we're like totally out of the loop, which, keeping us in the loop, advising on this project, commenting on this project is actually a requirement under the law and under Massachusetts regulations, which is regulation 950 CMR 71. So I think you can tell that I'm pretty furious about it, and I think it's highly inappropriate and frankly shocking. So I have requested, included in the packet are the 2 comments from the Massachusetts Historical Commission. I've requested that the Historical Commission be sure to copy the local Historical Commission on all of their communications. Obviously, I shouldn't have to do that. And I've requested of Libby Gibson, our town manager, that she let project managers in the town know that when they're using state and federal funds and they're going through the section 106 or the 950 CMR 71 process and notifying the Massachusetts Historical Commission, they also need to notify the Nantucket Historical Commission. I don't know what will happen. I don't know if we will get notified, if we'll still have to basically stalk these documents through the state agency. But I would like to see these plans, the complete plans proposed for this project, and I'd like our commission to consider them and submit our comments to the Massachusetts Historical Commission. And I'd like to hear everyone's comments about that. And I'm going to start with Nikki.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised we haven't seen them either, and I don't know what plans that they've developed that we haven't seen. It's if it's something that we're supposed to be doing, I'd like to do it. I think that it's something I would like to do myself personally, and we need to see them. So definitely.
David.
Yeah, I recall back, it must have been pre-COVID when we originally discussed, this topic, and obviously we haven't received an update since. So kind of want to just echo frustration that's coming from you, Hillary, and kind of maybe think longer and harder about if there's a way that as a commission, we can be taken a little bit more seriously, and just have things done the right way the first time, so that we aren't playing catch up. That's kind of how I feel. So,
Angus?
I would echo everybody's comments so far. It is frustrating to be left out of the process that we should be a part of, and playing catch up is not efficient. And I hope that moving forward that that any topics like this are shared with us. We've been commissioned for over a year now, and everyone should be aware that we exist and are participating and need to participate in all these issues. So I hope that, again, moving forward, that we are included.
Thank you. Clement?
Yeah, I certainly agree with everyone. I thought we were making much progress in everyone knowing that we exist. So I'm sorry to hear there's been something we were left out of. So thank you, Hillary, for sticking your hand up and getting us back in hopefully in the loop with all of these things.
Georgia?
I think at the beginning, there may have been a few hiccups that we encountered that kept us from being accepted as a relevant part of the decision-making process. But I think those hiccups have been overcome over a year ago now, and we really ought to be on everybody's radar. Is there something we can do, or should we be sending a re-notification? It seems sort of embarrassing to say, hello, here we are. But maybe that is what we need to do. Or maybe we should send our annual summary to these different entities that we feel are not taking enough note of what we do.
I see that Holly has her hand up, but I just want to finish hearing from the commissioners. Georgia, were you finished, or is there anything else that you want to say?
I'm sorry, was my volume too low?
No, we heard you. I just wanted to make sure you were concluded your remarks. Okay. Tom, did you want to say anything here?
Well, I think that the previous commission prior to us, unfortunately, was not that successful. And the board that we have now, that we all make up, I think has proven to everybody that we are serious and we are committed and we are trying to make a difference. And so I think that including us in a lot of this is important.
Okay, thanks. I see David wanted to make another comment.
Yeah, Hillary, I'm just wondering if there's, I know that you shoulder a lot of responsibility in managing, all of these projects. And, I know that we even developed the flow chart to kind of try and hone in on projects we wanted to prioritize. Is there anything that other commissioners or myself can do to help keep these projects from kind of slipping through the cracks? Is there any help anything that we can do to stay on top of project managers or town staff, whoever it is that is, allowing these oversights to kind of happen in perpetuity, it seems?
Well, it's a good question, David, but it's almost a question that I don't want to have to ask because, public service should not be this hard. Like, we exist as a commission. Everybody knows we exist as a commission. We exist as a commission by authority of the law. We have our own enabling legislation. And it is the responsibility of the consultant, Beta, to distribute the plans to the interested parties. And we are always an interested party when the Massachusetts Historical Commission is an interested party. They obviously, know or would have asked. Past consulting engineers have distributed plans to the Historical Commission. I mean, with the Bartlett Road roundabout that we reviewed, the consultant, which I think was VHB, distributed the plans to the Historical Commission and the Historic District Commission. It's both of us. So at some point, folks have to recognize that, like, the shenanigans have to end. Holly, please go ahead.
So first and foremost, I'm going to apologize, okay? First of all, we're in the middle of a pandemic. This was a project that the previous transportation planner started, and I was consulted with. I brought it to y'all's attention before they even submitted their formal documents to MHC. May was when Nantucket shut down because of this pandemic. And I did receive a copy of a letter from MHC to Mike Burns, who's no longer with the town of Nantucket, dated May 19th, 2020, on this project, on the Sparks Avenue Sidewalk Improvement Project. And it was forwarded to me. I did not send it to you all. I'm so sorry. Again, we've been in a pandemic, and quite frankly, I don't, I apologize. I hope you really take my sincere apologies on that. But at the end of the day, it did say that, which is not uncommon, Brona, who is the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office for Massachusetts Historical, through Jonathan Patton, who I know, requested an archaeological recognizance survey to be done. I have not, I don't know if Beta has done that. I did hear, I believe that PAL is an archaeological firm that works in New England area. They've been around for a long time. They do a lot of work. We're going to be doing that archaeological work. I have not heard anything since. Again, you know, we don't have a transportation planner. There's a lot of different players involved. I'm not trying to make excuses, but I'm just also trying to let you know this is not usual time. And I think in usual circumstances, I would have had direct communication as well as I would have been able to give it to you all in time. Again, I will take the blame for this, for not having this communication to you all. I did send it to Hillary the other day when she was inquiring. So she does have that for you all to have. It was forwarded to me as soon as, I'm not even listed as a recommendation. That's another thing too. So Massachusetts, just like any other federal government or state government or local government, sometimes there's not an actual communication with one set of contacts, if you will. So I've received stuff in my attention from MHC, but I've received stuff from addressed to the previous chair of the Historical Commission, addressed to 16 Broad Street. That's incorrect. I have sent emails in the past to say, hey, please send anything to the Historical Commission to my attention at Fairgrounds Road. Some things do get sent, some things don't. I received something, I don't even know where it is at the moment, but it was about the grant that we've applied for. And that it was attention to the previous chair. So again, I guess there's some issues up on the state level as far as what address goes. But I want some understanding, you know, that this has not been business as usual and things do happen, but I can send an email to Beta and request additional information. You know, the planning director and the DPW director have communicated with me back in May that was something that they were working on. I haven't heard anything since. I do have proposed plans that were done in July, it looks like, that they're hard copy. I do not have a digital copy. I don't know if they've been revised. I'll leave it at that.
So Holly, thank you. And I certainly appreciate it's been a difficult time and everyone has just a whole new set of logistics that we have to handle. And I appreciate your apology. I'm really not willing to put it all on you, Holly. I know that there's no one at Plus who's more diligent than you are. That's been made really clear in the year that I've worked with you. I personally wrote to Andrew and requested all of the plans and requested to be a consulting interested party on this, and nothing has been sent to us. And Andrew and Rob both should have made sure that it was sent directly to the chair of the Historical Commission, and they should have come to the Historical Commission and presented it. So what I'd like to do now is, yes, Holly, if you could ask somebody in the office to make a copy of those paper plans and leave it for me to pick up. I will come and pick it up when I'm on the island next week, and request digital copies of the plans be emailed, and I will share them with the commission. And at our next meeting, we can have some time to look at the plans and comment on the plans. The Massachusetts Historical Commission's concerns are archaeological. I didn't know this, and Susan was supposed to be at our meeting, but had something come up and isn't able to attend, so I'll catch her up on this. But it is common on Nantucket that the edges of graveyards contain human remains underneath the pavement, underneath sidewalks and streets. That's the case at the Quaker burial. There are Quakers' remains underneath this Prospect Street. So they always look for this on Nantucket, and they were anticipating that. I think our commission has that as a concern and are grateful that the SHPO is also looking for that. There are other things that our commission has as a concern that we would like to develop and articulate and express to the MHC. And that's why the partnership between the local historical commission and the Mass Historical Commission is so important. So this will be an opportunity for us to develop those, and we will be expressing these concerns to the MHC, and they are the deciding body with any commentary about adverse effects of this project. So, and I see, Holly, that you're confirming that.
Yes, I also just want to mention that this was, you know, our former transportation planner was very proactive with this application. I was consulted with him with Beta before they submitted their application to MHC. This is the one that I brought to you all's attention about the Newtown Road Cemetery all the way through Sparks Avenue to the Rotary, including those 1940s, 1950s structures along the Rotary area. I went through the entire NHL, gave them all that information, and that was included in their application. So, you know, that was in May, and that was before the shutdown. So it wasn't until we received, I was copied on an email from Beta, attaches a copy of the letter and concept plan we sent to MHC in May. And I believe that's what I forwarded to you. But it wasn't until, you know, I have no idea since the May 19th letter from MHC on where any of the archaeology work has been done. But my understanding is that was in the works. Yeah, and again, like any other thing that's, I'm sorry?
It has not been done. The MHC is still waiting for that. And I think what was happening was the Beta proposed an alternate route to try to not have any impact and avoid having the work. And the MHC said you still need to do the work. You know, halfway compliance is still lack of compliance. So, you know, the plans need to be sent to us for our review, and we will review them, and we'll send our comments to the MHC, and they can either, you know, consider our comments to be useful and something to be acted on, or tell us that they don't agree. But I do want
absolutely
that we follow the process. In the case of federal dollars, it's a Section 106 review in accordance with the Historic Preservation Act of 1966. With state funds, and these are state funds, it's 950 CMR 71. And I think we're good. So we're going to get the plans. Holly will get a physical copy if I could pick that up. We'll get a digital copy, and it'll be, we'll consider it, and it'll be on our agenda for the next meeting in January. Good?
I'll see what I can do, because it's a hard copy. So I get that's all I have.
And the digital,
I'll work on it.
We'll get a digital copy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I got to find out if these are, I don't even know if these have been revised. I have no idea, but yeah, this hard copy that I have, somehow I'll get digitized and sent to you.
Well, Holly, just to make it easy on yourself, I recommend that you just inform Beta that they need to copy the Historical Commission and not just the HDC, and ask Beta to send us send us everything they sent to the HDC and the MHC sent to us, and that then you don't have to do any chasing of things. Just put it on them.
Will do. And I can also let them know that, I mean, it's always nice for the HDC to be notified, but really and truly, you all are the ones that do the Section 106 review. So you really should be listed as a CC, and you weren't. So
yeah, and they're
duly noted. I will send them.
Thank you, Holly. And there are a lot of other reviews. The sewer project is enormous, and it affects the streets and the curbs all through the historic area. So, yes, Holly.
So yes, as your preservation planner, I have been contacted on that. Through COVID, their consultants, who's very fantastic. They're the ones who, I can't remember at the top of my head. There's so many different consultants at the moment. But they're the ones who did the upgrades to the C Street pump station. I don't know if you're well aware of that one. I can tell you our consultants for Resilient Nantucket thought it was a fantastic job of incorporating floodproofing mechanisms within our historic district on a historic structure, by the way. That is a consultant that's doing that program. That is something that they reached out to me again as your preservation planner, as liaison to the commissions. That's something that they can do that with me. And my biggest thing to them was, which I knew something that you all would indicate on, you know, this is 17. Some of this area that this is going through is the 1717 laid out fish lots, and we you know, this goes back to one of the earlier timeframes in our development of Nantucket, and we want to make sure that any areas that are not already been previously disturbed, especially our sidewalks, are taken in consideration. And I've been notified that through that they're going to have limited disturbance within. And in the road, it's going to be in the middle of the road, not in the sidewalks. So that was good. There may be some situations where they may need to redo a couple of sidewalks, and that was supposed to be brought to y'all's attention as well as the HDC's attention. I'm not too sure where that stands right now, but yes, they've been copying me on all their correspondence. I will, again, there's been a lot of things going on, but I will scan those because it's all been hard copies that's been sent to me. But I will scan those in and send them to you all so you have it. I am working on these. These are something, you know, obviously Section 106 is very important as a preservationist, especially for the town. So yes, they have been communicating with staff on this project. So I haven't heard anything further in the last couple of months.
So in that case, and you know, Libby did notify me a couple weeks before it was presented to the select board that it did involve sidewalks. But I think the thing to happen here is similar to the Complete Streets project. The consultant, when they send information to the MHC, they need to copy the local historical commission, and it needs to get in front of this commission. We need to make a determination. You and I working together, I as the chair need to make a determination, and working with Angus as the vice chair about if this is something that we need to review. So if you could let the consultant know to add us as an interest, as a consulting party, we'd like to see this and make a determination as a commission about reviewing it. Because it really does specifically affect the curbs and everything you're aware of and notice. I just like to get that information. So thank you. And this is actually the perfect segue into our pamphlet, which I like to refer to as my craft project. Maybe, Holly, could you let me screen share? Okay, I can see that I can screen share. Sorry, I'm just trying to locate, make sure I have the packet open. Okay. Can you guys see this?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to go. Okay. So what we're working on here is turning all of the work that we've done on analyzing pavement, communicating about this, how to preserve the pavement, how to repair the pavement in a responsible way, creating some recommendations and guidelines that the project managers can use and the consulting engineers can use into a document that we could even have printed that we might share with other municipalities. This has been a signature project of ours, and there's been a ton of work and thinking put into it by many people. So I'll just kind of go through this. Did everybody have a chance to look at this? Yeah, okay. So we got this fantastic stock photo that I found, which shows a couple different treatments, gives people an idea. I thought we would put a letter here, which we can talk about. A lot of this language was pulled from past writings that we've had, but just trying to make it like more scannable, more digestible, more aesthetically appealing. There's really nothing new here except this bit about the salvage yard. I took this photo of the salvage yard. I think he was selling, well, I don't even want to tell you what he was selling this stuff for. So, okay, then we get to this goal. This is all out of our PowerPoint that we gave to Rob on the 25th. Defining really what we're achieving. It's not complicated. We want to maintain the character. And we think if you do these things, you're likely to retain the character. We go into the standards of treatment. I recognize that this says chart above. I need to change that to below. There might be some typos throughout here. You know, I think one of the things that we're saying here is that if you don't need to lift up the entire sidewalk, don't do it. I thought about that in the context of the way the whole downtown is being approached, and their approach is that they're going to lift every single one of those downtown sidewalks. Angus, is your meeting still on? Is the meeting still on today? Did you hear any confirmation of it?
I haven't gotten confirmation from anybody, but that's why I was blanked out my screen so that I could eat, because I won't have time to do anything except just run from our meeting downtown, if that's still happening. Holly, have you gotten word from anybody if they're still meeting?
I haven't heard anything. Nope.
It's not,
And I can't attend, so.
it's not like it's downpouring, but it's, you know, it has been a bit of a storm.
Yeah. Well, I would assume if you haven't gotten a cancellation that the meeting is still on. So I'd love to hear about how the suggestions that we have about treatments, we're making a distinction between, you know, this sidewalk here, which is actually Judith Chase Lane. So this whole sidewalk was not renovated, but we would say this is not a sidewalk that needs to be renovated. It should just be, you know, patched. And versus the approach that I think the town is taking, which is in certain areas, they're just going to step through and renovate every single sidewalk because that way they can be assured of consistency. I guess I'd like to know how to reconcile, if they're receptive to the idea, that there would be some sidewalks that don't need to be lifted and should just be patched. I think that's an outstanding question, but that's certainly our recommendation. Again, this is just taken from the information that we presented in the past. You know, the second point of feedback is, as you can see, you know, I don't think we would be opposed to some modification of this corner, but probably not this, certainly not this type of modification. And that we want to have a discussion about it. And we want to have the mindset be about preserving the character, not, you know, renewing or having renewal of this site. Identify the historic material. So if there's any questions, we're available to consult on this. We can help them identify the historic material. And then this is just a certain type of mindset that when you specify a project, you're going to leave the historic, you're going to document the historic material, you're going to leave it in there. You're going to not change the shape, scale, finish, unless it's required because it's a rehabilitation. You're going to repair and reuse the material. So the old bricks are going to go back in, you're going to try not to break them. Where you do break them and you need replacement in addition, you're thoughtful about where you source this. you're not going to create a false sense of history. I think this is a concept that that's obvious to preservationists, but isn't necessarily obvious to people who don't think this way. You know, you don't improve upon history. You're just kind of leaving what is there. The additions and alterations are minimal and compatible. So this gets to don't, you know, put some bulbous thing that didn't used to be there. And that gets to kind of the what to avoid. So I've thought about, this first picture is, these are curbs on Fair Street at the corner of Judith Chase Lane. And I've always wondered, why are these curb sets so low? And, you know, I've been given answers that I frankly don't believe. I actually think that the reason why these curbs are set so low is that the specification that these engineers, it was Kobo was doing the work, were given, said set the curbs at a certain depth and a certain amount of base material. And these curbs are shallower than they knew. They expected them to be 12 inches deep. And that's why they barely stick out of the ground. And these kinds of, you know, this is the problem when you have a specification and you're using old materials that might be dimensionally different than what you expected. And that's the sort of, we're asking them to do planning in with a preservation mindset, which means you have to assess what you have and make sure the plan that you're implementing is going to work. Now, you know, these inappropriate shapes, it's not that we're saying things can't change. It's just, you know, maybe there should be a bollard there, or maybe it should be squared off. And that's a discussion we want to have. And this, of course, is, you know, really regrettable. Okay, then we get into all of the wonderful research this consulting engineer produced and wanting to see it used and implemented. And the key observations are included here, but then the whole report is included. We get into some about the MAAB waivers, the Master Structural Access Board. You know, I hope that we could have a, you know, a frank conversation with the DPW about, and I just think that we should be working together with the Commission on Disabilities, and it should be especially easy because we have a member of the chair of the Commission of Disabilities on this commission. So that's basically the report. I had a couple ideas. Obviously, we want to clean up any typos. I had a couple ideas of additions. One is, do we need a flow chart? So turn the, you know, do we need some kind of a decision tree about what to do? And would it be useful to have kind of a note about sourcing materials? I mean, there was a lot of talk about the new curbs being too sharp and that they should have a different profile. There was talk about the brick and what brick is appropriate. There's been talk about the, when they actually, if they ever get to the sidewalks on Main Street, they're going to have to source some kind of granite flagstone. And we'd like to see a certain type sourced. And some work was done on that by Brian Pfeiffer. So should we have a new edition about, you know, specific about replacement materials? And I'm just gonna turn it over to you all now. That is my orientation of the report. I'll continue to keep the report up on the screen. And I see Tom has a hand up. Tom.
I unmuted.
Yes, we can hear you.
I think this report, this is, like you say, it's our signature work piece so far. I think it's so well done, so thorough and comprehensive. We might use a few more of the additions that you've just mentioned, but I'm just wondering whether or not we ought to turn this into a booklet type of a thing with a spiral binding, very similar to this, which is the original Building with Nantucket in Mind booklet for, and the reason people use spiral notebooks like this is so that it can be laid out flat and the pages won't keep turning in front of you. And it's a very useful thing. And I know it's only, you know, X amount of pages, but still, I'm wondering, we did manufacture something like that, where the funds would come from, I don't know, but it would be an official kind of a thing from us. Not a building with Nantucket in mind, but maybe an adjunct to it. And I think that it would be something that would be very useful going forward for the DPW or any other contractors that the town might hire to do this kind of work.
Yeah, that was certainly my thought, was that this would be printed. And I think actually that the Keep Nantucket Real Fund probably still has some funds that would print this, and it includes the, it's actually quite long because it includes the engineering report. So a spiral, that it wouldn't be flimsy if it's printed.
Well, I'm seeing 27 pages here already, and if you add a few other things that you've just mentioned, you could easily
Yeah.
35 pages, which would be a substantial.
Oh, Tom, it's way longer than that because.
Well, all right, yeah, I know, but I'm just
Well,
saying.
I'm just letting you know, our packet is incredibly, it's like 167 pages here.
I'm not necessarily including all of that, but the pictures of what's going on around town, of what's actually germane for Nantucket and things like that, but which is very specifics.
Yeah, I'm just wanting to be clear. I'm proposing that the engineering report, without all the incredibly long appendices of construction details, but the engineering report, which is like 60 pages, would go in this packet. Do you agree? Okay, I'm gonna, you know what, I'm gonna stop sharing so we can see each other more easily. And I'm just gonna go around and ask for comments on this report and next steps. I'm gonna start with Georgia.
I agree. First, I agree with Tom. I think it's a perfect candidate for a pamphlet and a spiral bound one without the appendices. But other than that, I think it's excellent. It summarizes, and I think it would at least bring some clarity to the issue of how we should deal with these things going forward. These streets.
Okay. David.
Yeah, I agree with both Tom and Georgia. I think that it would be really cool if, you know, the work that we did here could be shared with other communities and localities that might be experiencing some of the same problems. So I think it's great, and I agree with everyone.
Angus, I know you have to leave soon to go to the meeting about this very topic.
I wish I had a laminated copy to bring with me to the meeting. You know, working with masonry in the ground is often damp, and, you know, it's nice to have something that's not going to dissolve. But I think it serves as a perfect field guide. And wouldn't it have been great to have had this available for us to just reach out and grab when this became an issue for us? So for other communities, I think this would be immensely useful. But especially here, and all interested parties, whether you're the homeowner looking to understand what's going on the sidewalk out in front of your house, or you're at the DPW, you know, wondering about the resources. And speaking of resources, I do think that supplying some resources would make total sense. Of this is where you can get, you know, this aged stone or reclaimed curbs or bricks, or, you know, any of those things that would be useful.
Okay. Right, so that's a vote in favor of including some comment on resources. Nikki.
Yeah, I think it's a great document, and I think that the printing it is a perfect idea, because, you know, there's something that, you know, maybe that actually Rob McNeil would keep on his shelf somewhere, and other people would have it more readily available. It's sometimes easier to pull out a little pamphlet rather than search for something on your computer. So I like the idea of printing and distributing.
Ben, did you want to comment on this?
You know, I'm still catching up on everything you guys are doing, so I don't have a comment at the moment.
Okay. Mary Bergman, I don't know if you're still listening, but you know, the NPT has prioritized this as important to them as well. Did you want to comment on this pamphlet or what you included and comment about the approach? Are you there? Oh.
I am. I'm eating my lunch. I don't have any comments at this time.
Okay. Holly?
Looks great. Good job.
All right. So good. I can't tell you, like, I'm so thrilled to kind of finish this project. It has been a total marathon. It's taken a lot of time, and we've had wonderful helpers and support from the community. The thing is the select board kicked off with a lot of engagement in this back in the spring of 2019. And I think the people there were still interested in this issue, but you know, it's a bit of a different board now with the addition of Sparky. And we proposed a change to the road limitation of road construction bylaw to protect and make it actually a legal obligation at the time Nantucket to keep historic pavement in situ. And I haven't gotten any specific feedback except that the town administration does not support the introduction of a bylaw. And Dawn had like a very quick, almost offhand comment in another discussion that we were having, saying, you know, Tom does this really have to go to a meeting, and you know, I don't want you to be oppositional with Rob McNeil. And I would say that it's always better, and this is expressed in that quote from the HDC handbook from the 60s, it's always better to have a, you know, a universally accepted recognition of what's important and what is the right way to do something. And having some kind of a working understanding. And, you know, if we could have the select board endorse this and the DPW accept this and agree to follow this approach, I mean, we've already made so many strides with the DPW simply because at least they're reusing the historic material and not flagging it as something to go into the dumpster. So or go into the, you know, boneyard in their yard. Yes, Tom. Sorry, you muted yourself, Tom.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yeah,
now?
we can hear you. Good.
I think that I can't see the DPW not welcoming this. I mean, it actually gives them a guidebook to go by, and something that's been lacking here, as the report reports since you know, back in the early 70s, when the last guys that knew how to do this, you know, got out of it. And so for the last 40 years or so, we've been in a decline in terms of people that know how to do a lot of this kind of work, and they were all local. And I think if this book actually could almost work as a textbook for some people who had those talents but really didn't know how to do it and could get back into it, I can't imagine that the DPW wouldn't welcome that.
Okay. Well, what I'd like to see happen is I'd like to see, and I'm going to request that the select board put pavement back on their agenda. You know, the last time I actually pulled up the meeting minutes from the select board. The last time they talked about this was June 5th of 2019. And Rob made a presentation from the sidewalk work group. The work group has not been convened since May of 2019. And it was sort of like, okay, we're going to agree to consult with each other and talk to each other and have like this continuous feedback process. And I remember Holly stood up at that meeting and said, this is a start, you know, it's a good start, but it's just a start. So I think, you know, we're at a point where we're answering the select board's request for process and an understanding about handling the historic resource in our streets. And I don't think this has to go to town meeting, but we do have to have a working understanding, and that has to come through the select board with agreement from the historical commission, the HDC, our staff, and that would include you, Holly, the DPW, and the rest of the planning department, and the sewer department, because they're tearing up streets. So that's the sort of thing that I thought I might put in the letter, and that's what I'd like to have a motion that we should pursue, if you all agree.
So moved.
Okay. Second.
Second.
Thank you, David. Okay, all in favor, Mickey,
Aye.
Georgia. I see you saying aye, Georgia.
Aye.
Okay.
I,
Dan is our alternate, so I won't ask him to vote on this, and I am an aye. And I also want to say Clement texted me, she said she's sorry to have to leave the meeting, the report is so needed, it should be printed and followed. Thank you so much, it's needed all over the island. So we'll go ahead and pursue that, and 3 cheers for historic pavement. We need to wrap up soon. I do want everybody to know that I'm kind of bearing the headline here, we were invited to participate in a grant application. So our pre-application was accepted. I'm sure that's no surprise to folks, but still it's a nice endorsement. Information was mailed. We haven't received it. We're going to try to track it down. The grant is due in February. So I'll be working with Holly. This will be on our agenda for our next meeting. Also, the town Plus has requested $50,000 in the next fiscal year budget for survey grants. So was what was requested last year or in the current year, but had to be canceled. We're requesting it again. And as you know, the grant for this $40,000 project for surveys is a reimbursement matching grant. So we're going to have to pay $40,000 and then we'll get $20,000 back, assuming we are awarded the grant, which we have to apply for. So we will have funds in next year's budget to begin a survey effort and to fund this project. So thank you very much to town administration and to Plus for including that and for valuing the importance of historic surveys. I have projects on the project sheet. You know, I do think it's worth pulling that up in our last 5 minutes, just so you guys can keep top of mind. I'm going to share my screen again. All the stuff that's happening. I think it's actually at the beginning. Okay. Can you all see this?
Yeah.
This is our project list. So anything that has yellow had a change in status. So we just talked about the historic poles of streets. The Arthur Cooper plaque is moving forward. The donor has paid for everything directly to the vendors. I have something really cool to tell you about this. So this is to create a monument to Arthur Cooper in the land bank park that is on the corner of Angola and New Mill. And we sourced the boulder from the area. So there was a boulder in the ground at the corner of Angola and New Mill in a property owned by the Midlers that is being developed right now. And I got the contact of the land bank. I showed the boulder to Jesse at the land bank and wrote to the Millers, and they donated the boulder. So the boulder that we're using for the plaque is actually, if the glacier had deposited it just like 20 feet to the,
Perfect.
Yeah, isn't that cool? Neil Patterson's already pulled it out of the ground. So I think we'll have this bronze plaque produced we might not get it until March. I have tried, and I'm making headway, having conversations with the Museum of African American History, because we love to have their partnership in some kind of event. February is Black History Month. I'm not sure if we'll be able to do this for February or not. And we will, Holly, reach out to your history teacher. Don't worry. Surveys.
Reach out to who?
Your history teacher.
Oh, yes, yes, too. And I also want to mention, when that does get completed, I think that would be something that town admin would probably want to put in the town manager's newsletter that she sends out. I think that's something that to emphasize a mutual town commission and land bank project. I think that would be great.
Yeah, great idea. Good suggestion, Holly. Okay, so we talked about road construction bylaw. That's probably not going to be in 2020. Certainly it's not necessary if we have a working agreement. And so I think our emphasis will be to have this working agreement in place. Town meeting, by the way, is moved to June. So the citizens warrant will be reopened, something to keep in mind. We talked about Harbor Place. We talked about updating this historic structure surveys. Museum exhibit about preservation. Estelle is continuing to work on this. She is going to be reaching out. Should we have a narrative? I've looked at her narrative with her. The idea is to try to have not in 2021, but 2022, an exhibit about preservation, an exhibit about the preservation movement, how preservation has happened on Nantucket. And we would be an interested party along with everyone else. So the next step here is to get kind of a working group of the different preservation organizations together and see if everybody will sign on to it, and see if then we could secure some sort of a space for this. So we're, supporting this, but not leading it. So ATM 2020, I don't think we're going to be proposing anything else for ATM 2020. But we can certainly, and we should, comment. So we will have a meeting where we go through the warrant, the citizens warrant, and comment. We talked about the impact review during our meeting. We have some other things down at the bottom where we are participating. I actually don't have any update on design guidelines. I don't know why I highlighted that. That probably shouldn't be highlighted. The historic streetscape study, I guess the only update there is that has been pushed out because of COVID. But when we get that information, we should integrate it into our pamphlet. And our mission statement, just to say that was complete. That's complete. I think we have some other projects. Yeah, no. So we can keep a list of completed projects, and that'll be a growing list. So that's it. I'm going to stop sharing. Is there anything else that anybody wants to bring up? No. The only other thing that I would like to bring up is that I really hope that sometime we can just have sort of a social party, and it's the holidays and we're all missing our friends, missing being able to have gatherings and appreciate the people in our lives. And maybe we all should have had a cookie break or something to commemorate or have Zoom tales. But I just want to tell you all, this is our last meeting of the year. I think it's been a huge year for the Historical Commission. I appreciate so much each and every one of you. It's really enriched my life to work with you all. I'm sorry that we can't get together and have a social, just learn more about each other and spend time together socially, but I just wanted to thank you all and wish you all happy holidays, happy New Year.
Next year, Hillary.
Yeah. Tom, we can't hear you. You're muted, Tom.
Can't figure out which one of those is what it is. Thank you very much for all your efforts, Hillary, and happy holidays to everybody.
Happy holidays, everybody. Hillary, thank you so much for all of your work on the commission.
Huge.
What we reviewed today is just another example of your dedication to to preserving Nantucket. So thank you, and be well through the new year.
Well put, Angus. Thanks, Hillary.
Thank you, Hillary.
Great work, Hillary. Great work. Thank you.
Well,
I'm
thank you.
needing a motion for adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. It's a team. It's a great team. And I look forward to a terrific next year, 2021. And I'll see you next year.
Okay.
Happy holidays.
Bye, guys. Happy holidays.